Everything is foreign to us, Lucilius. Only time is truly ours. Seneca wrote that 2,000 years ago. And every time Thomas enters his workshop alone, that sentence descends through the silence like an ember on cold metal. Today there is no apprentice, no urgent commission. There is only him, the anvil, and a bar of steel that has been waiting 3 days to be worked. Thomas looks at it for a long moment, not with laziness, with something harder to name. He pours a cup of coffee, sits in a worn wooden chair that no longer has varnish, only the marks of decades of leaning elbows. He looks at his hands, hands his father used to call hands that think, and he begins to remember. It's not nostalgia. It's something more useful than nostalgia. It's the voice of time arriving from where you least expect it, from the past, to say something about right now. Have you ever stood still? Not from lack of will, but because something inside you knew it wasn't time yet? Or the opposite? Have you thrown everything into the furnace before the metal was ready and watched the forge consume what it should have shaped? Today there is no apprentice in this story. There is only a master, his memories, and the most silent lesson Seneca ever wrote about time. Hit like if you've waited too long or acted too soon. Subscribe and stay with me. The workshop smells different when it's empty, less urgency in the air. The forge fire burns low, maintained, not forced. Thomas walks slowly between the workbenches. He's not looking for anything. He's letting his eyes rest. He stops in front of an old hammer hanging on the wall. It's no longer in use. The head is worn down on one side. The handle has a thin crack sealed with wrapped linen and old glue. No apprentice would know what to do with it. Thomas knows exactly. It was his father's. He doesn't take the hammer down. He only looks at it. And for a moment the workshop has another dimension, larger, louder, smelling of sawdust and coal. He is 18 years old and listening to a voice that doesn't need to repeat itself to be obeyed. What are you waiting for, boy? The metal doesn't announce when it's ready, you learn to feel it. Thomas returns to the steel bar waiting for him. He places his open palm a few inches from the cold metal, an ancient gesture, almost ritual. He evaluates, not with instruments, with years. Then he lights the forge at the exact point. Not too much, not too little. While the metal heats, he drinks his coffee, already cold. He doesn't seem bothered. There is a kind of wisdom in drinking cold coffee without complaining. The same wisdom as waiting for the metal at the right temperature without anticipating the strike. And here is the paradox Seneca understood before any blacksmith. The time that seems wasted while you wait is, more often than not, the only time that is genuinely being used. Everything else, the hurry, the infinite planning, the productive anxiety, is noise over silence. Stay with me, because the memory that comes next is not about nostalgia. It's about the only lesson no apprentice can learn before the right moment. Subscribe to the channel. The metal is beginning to change color. Dark red, still resistant. Thomas watches without intervening. And the memory comes whole, not in fragments, but as a scene that time couldn't wear down. He had just finished his first blade alone. 3 weeks of work, perfect in appearance. He went to show his father with a full chest. His father held it, evaluated it, handed it back without saying a word, and walked away to the back of the workshop. Thomas stood there, blade in hand, not understanding. Later, his father returned with a piece of raw metal, the most irregular, the most difficult from the pile. He placed it on the workbench in front of his son. Do it again, but this time, don't start until you know exactly what this piece wants to become. How will I know what it wants to become? Stay quiet in front of it long enough, the metal tells you. Thomas spent 2 days simply looking at that piece of steel, not touching it, not planning on paper, just present. On the third day, when he finally picked up the hammer, he knew exactly every strike that would come. The blade was finished in half the time of the previous one, and it was twice the blade. His father saw it, nodded, said one single thing, "Now you've wasted 2 days well." Thomas didn't understand at the time. It took years. The metal in the forge is now bright orange. Almost. Thomas stands from the chair without hurry. He picks up the hammer, not his father's, his own, marked with all his years on the handle. And he thinks of Seneca, who never forged a blade in his life, but understood better than anyone the weight of poorly used time. Because the problem is not the time you lose resting, contemplating, waiting for the right moment. The problem is the time you lose in motion, but in the wrong motion. Planning what you could be doing, researching what you could be attempting, revising what you could be delivering. Dum differtur vita transcurrit. Seneca. While we delay, life passes. Thomas knows that kind of delay. Not the lazy one, anyone recognizes that. The sophisticated delay. The kind with perfect spreadsheets before the first sketch. The research that outlasts the project. The conversation about the blade that replaces the blade itself. He removes the metal from the forge, deep orange. The exact moment, not before, not after. The first strike rings clean, precise, like a statement. The metal responds. And Thomas thinks that perhaps all his father's wisdom fit inside that single gesture, knowing the difference between waiting and delaying. Waiting is active. It is observing, feeling, preparing the strike with such precision that when it comes it needs no force. Delaying is passive. It is letting the metal cool while you decide whether to strike at all. Thomas works in silence for a long time. The blade takes shape. At the end of the afternoon, when the window light shifts from gold to orange, he stops. He holds what he made. It is not perfect, but it is real, and made at the right time. He looks at his father's old hammer still on the wall, and this time he smiles, because he finally understands what his father meant by 2 days well wasted. They weren't wasted days. They were the only 2 days completely gained that month. Everything else was noise. Seneca knew. His father knew. And now, after decades, Thomas knows too. So I ask you, what in your life is waiting for your strike? Not because you don't know how to hit, but because you haven't yet stood still long enough to know what that piece of metal wants to become. Don't confuse planning with presence. Don't confuse research with courage. And don't confuse waiting with delaying. The metal cools, but the right moment, when you recognize it, needs no rush. It only needs you, there, whole. Hit like if this story touched something in you. Subscribe for the next Forge sessions, and comment. What have you been delaying that should have already started? Or what did you start before the metal was ready? Until next time, remember, time is the only raw material that never goes back into the forge.